All right, we are coming up on 12 o'clock. 12 o'clock? 8 o'clock? What the hell time is it? Anyway, we're coming up on 8 o'clock. So, let's go ahead and settle in, get comfortable, and dive back in to where we left off. Welcome back. Tonight is our third night of reading from the Maltese Falcon. This has been a spectacular exploration of crime noir. We've seen Sam Spade up to his antics as he's really getting into his element again and twisting the situation to his best benefit. Yeah, scared me too. There's a 12 on the first page, and I might be easily distracted. In other news of distraction, I found myself a very nice bottle of Sazerac rye tonight as I was restocking my gin. So, we'll be in for a treat eventually when I get around to opening it. But I've heard very good things about this bottle. We'll see if it lives up to the hype. I'm pretty easy to please, if I'm being entirely honest. So, we'll see. We'll see. So, the Maltese Falcon. We've seen the police are getting into things and generally making a muck of Sam's own plans. But that's not enough to really stymie the machinations that we've got going on. And Cairo is not really on the up and up here. Neither is Miss O'Shaughnessy. So I think everyone is keeping their cards close to their chest, and that's probably for the best. I don't think anyone has anyone but their own best interests in heart. Sorry. So, with that little bit of prelude, let's go ahead and shift gears and get back into our reading. Fade back into black and white, because there's nothing as appropriate as that. Oh, hello, Zoe. Yes, hello. Alright, so let's start back from chapter 11 of the Maltese Falcon. We have a lot to get ahead of us. We're about 40% or so of the way through. We're making good progress, and we're about on track, on pace. So let's see, as we cross the halfway mark, whether things start to go completely off the rails. Chapter 11, The Fat Man. The telephone bell was ringing when Spade returned to his office after sending Bridget O'Shaughnessy off to Effie Perrine's house. He went to the telephone. Hello? Yes, this is Spade. Yes, I got it. I've been waiting to hear from you. Who? Mr. Gutman? Oh, yes, sure. Now, the sooner the better. 12C. Right. Say 15 minutes. Right. Spade sat on the corner of his desk beside the telephone and rolled a cigarette. His mouth was a hard, complacent V. His eyes, watching his fingers make the cigarette, smoldered over lower lids drawn up straight. The door opened and Eva Archer came in. Spade said, "Hello, honey," in a voice as lightly amiable as his face had suddenly become. "Oh, Sam, forgive me, she cried in a choked voice. She stood just inside the door, wadding a black-bordered handkerchief in her small, gloved hands, peering into his face with frightened, red, and swollen eyes. He did not get up from his seat on the desk corner. He said, "Sure, that's all right, forget it." "But Sam," she wailed, "I sent those policemen there. I was mad, crazy with jealousy. And I phoned them that if they'd go there, they'd learn something about Miles's murder." "What made you think that?" "Oh, I didn't. But I was mad, Sam, and I wanted to hurt you." It made things damned awkward. He put his arm around her and drew her nearer. "But it's all right now. Only, Don't get any more crazy notions like that. It won't, she promised. Ever. But you weren't nice to me last night. You were cold and distant and wanted to get rid of me. When I'd come down there and waited so long to warn you, and you... Warn me about what? About Phil. He's found out about you being in love with me. And Miles had told him about my wanting a divorce, though, of course, he never knew what for. And now Phil thinks you killed his brother because he wouldn't give me the divorce so we could get married. He told me he believed that, and yesterday he went and told the police. Yeah, she's getting things complicated, isn't she? That's nice, Spade said softly. And you came to warn me. And because I was busy, you got up on your ear and helped this damned Phil Archer stir things up? I'm sorry, she whimpered. I know you won't forgive me. I'm sorry. You ought to be, he agreed, on your own account as well as mine. Has Dundee been to see you since Phil did his talking? Or anybody from the Bureau? No. Alarm opened her eyes and mouth. They will, he said, and it'd be just as well to not let them find you here. Did you tell them who you were when you phoned? Oh, no. I simply told them that if they'd go to your apartment right away, they'd learn something about the murder and hung up. Where'd you phone from? The drugstore, up above your place. Oh, Sam, dearest, He patted her shoulder and said pleasantly, It was a dumb trick, all right, but it's done now. You'd better run along home and think up things to tell the police. You'll be hearing from them. Maybe it'd be best to say no right across the board. He frowned at something distant. Or maybe you'd better see Sid Wise first. He removed his arm from around her, took a card out of his pocket, scribbled 3 lines on its back and gave it to her. You can tell Sid everything, he frowned. Or almost everything. Where were you the night Miles was shot? Home, she replied without hesitating. He shook his head, grinning at her. I was, she insisted. No, he said, but if that's your story, it's all right with me. Go see Sid. It's up on the next corner, the pinkish building, room 827. Her blue eyes tried to probe his yellow-gray ones. What makes you think I wasn't home? She asked slowly. Nothing, except that I know you weren't. But I was! Her lips twisted and anger darkened her eyes. Effie Perrine told you that, she said indignantly. I saw her looking at my clothes and snooping around. You know she doesn't like me, Sam. Why do you believe things she tells you when you know she'd do anything to make trouble for me? Jesus, you women, Spade said mildly. He looked at the watch on his wrist. You'll have to trot along, precious. I'm late for an appointment now. You do what you want, but if I were you, I'd tell Sid the truth, or nothing. I mean, leave out the parts you don't want to tell him, but don't make anything up to take its place. I'm not lying to you, Sam, she protested. Like hell you're not, he said, and stood up. She strained on tiptoe to hold her face nearer his. You won't believe me, she whispered. I don't believe you. And you won't forgive me for what I did? Sure I do. He bent his head and kissed her mouth. That's all right. Now, run along. She put her arms around him. Won't you go with me to see Mr. Wise? I can't, and I'd only be in the way. He patted her arms, took them from around his body and kissed her left wrist between glove and sleeve. He put his hands on her shoulders, turned her face to the door, and released her with a little push. Beat it, he ordered. Well, Sam definitely should have expected this, and so should we. She seems a little scatterbrained, not really made out for all this work. And very likely she had a hand in a lot of things that probably she shouldn't have. So let's see what happens next. The mahogany door of Suite 12C at the Alexandria Hotel was opened by the boy Spade had talked to in the Belvedere lobby. Spade said hello good-naturedly. The boy did not say anything. He stood aside, holding the door open. Spade went in. A fat man came to meet him. The fat man was flabbily fat, with bulbous pink cheeks and lips and chins and neck, with a great soft egg of a belly that was all his torso, and pendant cones for arms and legs. As he advanced to meet Spade, all his bulbs rose and shook and fell separately with each step, in the manner of clustered soap bubbles not yet released from the pipe through which they had been blown. His eyes, made small by fat puffs around them, were dark and sleek. Dark ringlets thinly covered his broad scalp. He wore a black cutaway coat, black vest, black satin ascot tie holding a pinkish pearl, striped gray worsted trousers, and patent leather shoes. That was a very detailed description of a large man. This is, usually, you don't get quite into that detail. Someone's fat, they're fat. This was evocative. His voice was a throaty purr. "Oh, Mr. Spade," he said with enthusiasm, and held out a hand like a fat pink star. Spade took the hand and smiled and said, "How do you do, Mr. Gutman?" Holding Spade's hand, the fat man turned beside him, put his other hand to Spade's elbow, and guided him across a green rug to a green plush chair beside a table that held a siphon, some glasses, and a bottle of Johnny Walker whiskey on a tray. A box of cigars, Coronas del Ritz, 2 newspapers, and a small and plain yellow soapstone box. Spade sat in the green chair. The fat man began to fill 2 glasses from bottle and siphon. The boy had disappeared. Doors set in 3 of the room's walls were shut. The 4th wall, behind Spade, was pierced by 2 windows looking out over Geary Street. You know, before we continue, it comes to mind that I have not accurately predicted any of the liquors that have come about in this story so far. We've had rum, we've had cognac, we've had all sorts of things, and now we're getting into just plain old Johnny Walker. And here I am with gin. You know what? So be it. Spade sat in the green... Oh, no, we already went through that, okay. "We begin well, sir," the fat man purred, turning with a preferred glass in his hand. "I distrust a man when that says when. If he's got to be careful not to drink too much, it's because he's not to be trusted when he does." Spade took the glass and, smiling, made the beginning of a bow over it. The fat man raised his glass and held it against a window's light. He nodded approvingly at the bubbles running up in it. He said, "Well, sir, here's to plain speaking and clear understanding." They drank and lowered their glasses. The fat man looked shrewdly at Spade and asked, "You're a closed-mouthed man?" Spade shook his head. "I like to talk." "Better and better," the fat man exclaimed. "I distrust a closed-mouthed man. He generally picks the wrong time to talk, and says the wrong things. Talking's something you can't do judiciously unless you keep in practice." He beamed over his glass. "Well, we'll get along, sir. That we will." He set his glass on the table and held the box of Corona del Ritz out to Spade. "A cigar, sir." Spade took a cigar, trimmed the end of it, and lighted it. Meanwhile, the fat man pulled another green plush chair around to face Spade's within convenient distance, and placed a smoking stand within reach of both chairs. Then he took his glass from the table, took a cigar from the box, and lowered himself into his chair. His bulbs stopped jouncing and settled into flabby rest. He sighed comfortably and said, "Now, sir, we'll talk if you like, and I'll set you right out that I'm a man who likes talking to a man that likes to talk." Johnny Walker's kind of in that interesting spot where, like, black is reasonable. It's pretty all right. Red is for mixers, but it's a little overpriced. You can get very much better single malt for about the price of black, or even less. So it's kind of an awkward position. You're definitely paying for the brand. It is easy drinking, and I'll never turn down a black, but it's not my go-to choice. Swell. Will we talk about the blackbird? The fat man laughed, and his bulbs rode up and down on his laughter. Will we? He asked, and we will, he replied. His pink face was shiny with delight. You're the man for me, sir. A man cut along my own lines. No beating about the bush, but right to the point. Will we talk about the blackbird? We will. I like that, sir. I like that way of doing business. Let us talk about the blackbird by all means. But first, sir, answer me a question, please. Though, maybe it's an unnecessary one, so we'll understand each other from the beginning. You're here as Miss O'Shaughnessy's representative? Spade blew smoke above the fat man's head in a long, slanting plume. He frowned thoughtfully at the ash-tipped end of his cigar and replied deliberately, I can't say yes or no. There's something certain about it either way yet. He looked up at the fat man and stopped frowning. It depends. It depends on... Spade shook his head. If I knew what it depends on, I could say yes or no. The fat man took a mouthful from his glass, swallowed it, and suggested, Maybe it depends on Joel Cairo. Red's always been kind of like the bottom level of scotches. It is overpriced for being what it is. It's like a probably around on the level like a Cutty Sark or something, but it is what it is. Okay. Spade's prompt maybe was non-committal. He drank. The fat man leaned forward until his belly stopped him. His smile was ingratiating, and so was his purring voice. You could say, then, that the question is which one of them you'll represent? You could put it that way. It will be one or the other. I didn't say that. The fat man's eyes glistened. His voice sank to a throaty whisper, asking, Who else is there? Spade pointed his cigar at his own chest. There's me, he said. The fat man sank back in his chair and let his body go flaccid. He blew his breath out in a long, contented gust. That's wonderful, sir, he purred. That's wonderful. I do like a man that tells you right out he's looking out for himself. Don't we all? I don't trust a man that says he's not. And the man that's telling the truth when he says he's not, I distrust most of all. Because he's an ass, and an ass that's going contrary to the laws of nature. Spade exhaled smoke. His face was politely attentive. He said, Uh-huh. Now, let's talk about the blackbird. The fat man smiled benevolently. Let's, he said. He squinted, so that fat puffs crowding together left nothing of his eyes but a dark gleam visible. Mr. Spade, have you any conception of how much money can be made out of that blackbird? No. The fat man leaned forward again and put a bloated pink hand on the arm of Spade's chair. Well, sir, if I told you, by gad, if I told you half, you'd call me a liar. Spade smiled. "No," he said, "not even if I thought it. But if you won't take the risk, just tell me what it is, and I'll figure out the profits." The fat man laughed. "You couldn't do it, sir. Nobody could do it that hadn't had a world of experience with things of that sort. And," he paused impressively, "there aren't any other things of that sort." His bulbs jostled one another as he laughed again. He stopped laughing abruptly. His fleshy lips hung open as laughter had left them. He stared at Spade with an intentness that suggested myopia. He asked, "You mean you don't know what it is?" Amazement took the throatiness out of his voice. Spade made a careless gesture with his cigar. "Oh, hell," he said lightly. "I know what it's supposed to look like. I know the value in life you people put on it. I don't know what it is." "She didn't tell you?" "Miss O'Shaughnessy?" "Yes, a lovely girl, sir." "Uh-huh. No." The fat man's eyes were dark gleams in ambush behind pink puffs of flesh. He said indistinctly, "She must know." And then, "And Cairo didn't either." Cairo's cagey. He's willing to buy it, but he won't risk telling me anything I don't know already. The fat man moistened his lips with his tongue. "How much is he willing to buy it for?" he asked. $10,000. The fat man laughed scornfully. 10,000, and dollars, mind you, not even pounds. That's the Greek for you. Huh. And what did you say to that?" "I said if I turned it over to him, I'd expect the 10,000. "Ah, yes, if. Nicely put, sir." The fat man's forehead squirmed in a flesh-blurred frown. "They must know," he said, only partly aloud then. "Do they? Do they know what the bird is, sir? What was your impression?" "I can't help you there," Spade confessed. "There's not much to go by. Cairo didn't say he did, and he didn't say he didn't. She said she didn't, but I took it for granted that she was lying." "That was not an injudicious thing to do," the fat man said, but his mind was obviously not on his words. He scratched his head. He frowned until his forehead was marked by raw red creases. He fidgeted in his chair as much as his size and the size of the chair permitted fidgeting. He shut his eyes, opened them suddenly wide, and said to Spade, "Maybe they don't." His bulbous pink face slowly lost its worried frown and then, more quickly, took on an expression of ineffable happiness. "If they don't," he cried, and again, "if they don't, I'm the only one in the whole wide, sweet world who does." Spade drew his lips back in a tight smile. "I'm glad I came to the right place," he said. The fat man smiled too, but somewhat vaguely. Happiness had gone out of his face, though he continued to smile, and caution had come into his eyes. His face was a watchful-eyed, smiling mask, held up between his thoughts and Spade. His eyes, avoiding Spade's, shifted to the glass at Spade's window. His face brightened. "By gad, sir," he said, "your glass is empty." He got up and went to the table, and clattered glasses and siphon and bottle mixing 2 drinks. Spade was immobile in his chair, until the fat man, with a flourish and a bow and a jocular, "Ah, sir, this kind of medicine will never hurt you," he handed him his refilled glass. Then Spade rose and stood close to the fat man, looking down at him, and Spade's eyes were hard and bright. He raised his glass. His voice was deliberate, challenging. "Here's to plain speaking and clear understanding." The fat man chuckled, and they drank. The fat man sat down. He held his glass against his belly with both hands and smiled up at Spade. He said, "Well, sir, it's surprising, but it well, may be a fact that neither of them does know exactly what that bird is, and that nobody in all this whole wide, sweet world knows what it is, saving and accepting your humble servant, Caspar Gutman, Esquire. Swell. Spade stood with legs apart, one hand in his trousers pocket, the other holding his glass. When you've told me, there'll only be two of us who know. Mathematically correct, sir. The fat man's eyes twinkled. But, his smile spread, I don't know for certain that I'm going to tell you. Don't be a damned fool, Spade said patiently. You know what it is. I know where it is. That's why we're here. Well, sir, where is it? Spade ignored the question. The fat man bunched his lips, raised his eyebrows, and cocked his head a little to the left. You see, he said blandly, I must tell you what I know, but you will not tell me what you know. That is hardly equitable, sir. No, I do not think we can do business along those lines. Spade's face became pale and hot. He spoke rapidly in a low, furious voice. Think again, and think fast. I told that punk of yours that you'd have to talk to me before you got through. I'll tell you now that you'll do your talking today, or you are through. What are you wasting my time for, you and your lousy secret? Christ! I know exactly what that stuff is that they keep in the sub-treasury vaults, but what good does that do me? I can get along with you, god damn you! I can get along without you, god damn you. Maybe you could have got along without me if you'd kept clear of me. You can't now. Not in San Francisco. You'll come in or you'll get out. And you'll do it today. He turned and with angry heedlessness tossed his glass at the table. The glass struck the wood, burst apart, and splashed its contents in glittering fragments over the table and floor. Spade, deaf and blind to the crash, whirled to confront the fat man again. The fat man paid no more attention to the glass's fate than Spade did. Lips pursed, eyebrows raised, head cocked a little to the left. He had maintained his pink-faced blandness throughout Spade's angry speech, and he maintained it now. Spade, still furious, said, "And another thing, I don't want—" The door to Spade's left opened. The boy who had admitted Spade came in. He shut the door, stood in front of it with his hands flat against his flanks, and looked at Spade. The boy's eyes were wide open and dark with wide pupils. Their gaze ran over Spade's body from shoulders to knees and up again to settle on the handkerchief whose maroon border peeped from the breast pocket of Spade's brown coat. "Another thing," Spade repeated, glaring at the boy. "Keep that gunsel away from me while you're making up your mind. I'll kill him. I don't like him. He makes me nervous. I'll kill him the first time he gets in my way. I won't give him an even break. I won't give him a chance. I'll kill him." The boy's lips twitched in a shadowy smile. He neither raised his eyes nor spoke. The fat man said tolerantly, "Well, sir, I must say, you have a most violent temper." "Temper?" Spade laughed crazily. He crossed to the chair on which he had dropped his hat, picked up the hat, set it on his head, held out a long arm that ended in a thick forefinger pointing at the fat man's belly. His angry voice filled the room. "Think it over, and think like hell. You've got till 5:30 to do it in. Then you're either in or out, for keeps." He let his arm drop, scowled at the bland fat man for a moment, scowled at the boy, and went to the door through which he had entered. When he opened the door, he turned and said harshly, 5:30. Then the curtain. The boy, staring at Spade's chest, repeated the two words he had twice spoken in the Belvedere lobby. His voice was not loud. It was bitter. Spade went out and slammed the door. Remember, they're being a little coy about the boy. He's, most certainly saying a word that begins and ends a lot like fire truck. But for the time, that was simply not said, not put to page. So Spade is definitely making his move right here. He decided that with all the bandying of words, the time had come to set things to be a little bit more forceful. Whether or not this is going to backfire, or whether that was exactly the sort of stiffness of back that was necessary, we'll see. We'll see. But G was an interesting character nonetheless. It was, as we mentioned earlier, it's interesting to see someone so corpulent described in such detail. Usually, it's just a fat man. And that's about the most descriptive things get. But no. This time, we got the full intimation of what and how fat this particular little porkling was. So let's see what things will develop after that little bit of an explosion from Spade. Chapter 12, Merry-Go-Round. Spade rode down from Gutman's floor in an elevator. His lips were dry and rough in a face otherwise pale and damp. When he took out his handkerchief to wipe his face, he saw his hand trembling. He grinned at it and said, "Whew," so loudly that the elevator operator turned his head over his shoulder and asked, "Sir?" Spade walked down Geary Street to the Palace Hotel, where he ate luncheon. His face had lost its pallor, his lips their dryness, and his hand its trembling by the time he had sat down. He ate hungrily, without haste, and then went to Sid Wise's office. When Spade entered, Wise was biting a fingernail and staring at the window. He took his hand from his mouth, screwed his chair around to face Spade, and said, "Hello, push a chair up." Spade moved a chair to the side of the big paper-laden desk and sat down. "Mrs. Archer come in?" he asked. "Yes." The faintest of lights flickered in Wise's eyes. "Going to marry the lady, Sammy?" Spade sighed irritably through his nose. "Christ! Now you start that," he grumbled. A brief, tired smile lifted the corners of the lawyer's mouth. "If you don't," he said, "you're going to have a job on your hands." Spade looked up from the cigarette he was making and spoke sourly. "You mean you are? Well, that's what you're for. What did she tell you? About you? About anything I ought to know." Wise ran fingers through his hair, sprinkling dandruff down on his shoulders. "She told me she had tried to get a divorce from Miles so she could—" "I know all that," Spade interrupted him. "You can skip it. Get to the part I don't know." "How do I know how much she—" "Quit stalling, Sid." Spade held the flame of his lighter to the end of his cigarette. "What did she tell you that she wanted kept from me?" Wise looked reprovingly at Spade. "Now, Sammy," he began. "That's not—" Spade looked heavenward at the ceiling and groaned. "Dear God, he's my own lawyer, he that's got rich off me, and I have to get down on my knees and beg him to tell me things." He lowered at Wise. "What in the hell do you think I sent her to you for?" Wise made a wary grimace. "Just one more client like you," he complained, "and I'd be in a sanitarium. Or San Quentin." "You'd be with most of your clients." "Did she tell you where she was the night he was killed?" "Yes." "Where?" "Following him." Spade sat up straight and blinked. He exclaimed incredulously, "Jesus, these women!" Then he laughed, relaxed, and asked, "Well, what did she see?" Wise shook his head. "Nothing much. When he came home for dinner that evening, he told her he had a date with a girl at St. Mark, ragging her, telling her that was her chance to get the divorce she wanted. She thought at first he was trying to get under her skin. He knew—" "I know the family history," Spade said. "Skip it. Tell me what she did." "I will if you give me a chance. After he had gone out, she began to think that maybe he might have had that date. You know Miles. It would have been like him to—" "You can skip Miles's character, too." "I oughtn't tell you a damn thing," the lawyer said. "So she got their car from the garage, drove down to the St. Mark, sitting in the car across the street. She saw him come out of the hotel, and she saw that he was shadowing a man and a girl. She says she saw the same girl with you last night, who had come out just ahead of him. He knew then that he was working, had been kidding her. I suppose she was disappointed and mad. She sounded that way when she told me about it. She followed Miles long enough to make sure he was shadowing the pair, and then she went up to your apartment. You weren't home." "What time was that?" Spade asked. "When she got to your place? Between 9:30 and 10 at the first time." "The first time?" "Yes. She drove around for half an hour or so, and then tried again. That would make it, say, 10:30. You were still out, so she drove back downtown and went to a movie to kill time until after midnight. Then she thought she'd be more likely to find you in." Spade frowned. "She went to a movie at 10:30? "So she says. The one on Powell Street that stays open till 1 in the morning. She didn't want to go home, she said, because she didn't want to be there when Miles came. That always made him mad, it seems, especially if it was around midnight. He stayed in the movie till it closed. Wise's words came out slower now. There was a sardonic glint in his eye. "She says she had decided by then not to go back to your place again. She says she didn't know whether you'd like having her drop in that late. So she went to Tate's, the one on Ellis Street, had something to eat, and then went home. Alone." Wise rocked back in his chair and waited for Spade to speak. Spade's face was expressionless. He asked, "You believe her?" "Don't you?" Wise replied. "How do I know? How do I know it isn't something you fixed up between you to tell me?" Wise smiled. You don't cash many checks for strangers, do you, Sammy?" "Not basketfuls." "Well, what then? Miles wasn't home. It was at least 2 o'clock by then. Must have been. And he was dead." "Miles wasn't home," Wise said. "That seems to have made her mad again. His not being home first, to be made mad by her not being home. So she took the car out of the garage again and went back to your place." "And I wasn't home. I was down looking at Miles's corpse. Jesus, what a swell lot of merry-go-round riding." "Then what?" "She went home, and her husband still wasn't there, and while she was undressing, your messenger came with the news of his death." Spade didn't speak until he, with great care, rolled and lighted another cigarette. Then he said, "I think that's an all-right spread. It seems to click with most of the known facts. It ought to hold." Wise's fingers, running through his hair again, combed more dandruff down on his shoulders. He studied Spade's face with curious eyes, and asked, "But you don't believe it?" Spade plucked his cigarette from between his lips. "I don't believe it or disbelieve it, Sid. I don't know a damned thing about it." A wry smile twisted the lawyer's mouth. He moved his shoulders warily and said, "That's right. I'm selling you out. Why don't you get an honest lawyer, one you can trust?" "That fellow's dead." Spade Spade stood up. He sneered at Wise. "Getting touchy, huh? I haven't got enough to think about. Now I've got to remember to be polite to you. What did I do? Forget to genuflect when I came in?" Sid Wise smiled sheepishly. "You're a son of a gun, Sammy," he said. Well, that is certainly a yarn that Miss Archer spun. Or Ms. Widows are Ms., right? It's certainly a yarn she spun. The lawyer maybe helped suss things out to make sure it keeps straight. We'll see. Effie Perrine was standing in the corner of Spade's outer office when he returned. She looked at him with worried brown eyes and asked, "What happened?" Spade's face grew stiff. "What happened where?" he demanded. "Why didn't she come?" Spade took 2 long steps and caught Effie Perrine by the shoulders. "She didn't get there," he bawled into her frightened face. She shook her head violently from side to side. "I waited and waited and she didn't come. And I just couldn't get you on the phone, so I came down." Spade jerked his hands away from her shoulders, thrust them far down in his trousers pockets, and said, "Another merry-go-round," in a loud, enraged voice, and strode into his private office. He came out again. "Phone your mother," he commanded. "See if she's come yet." He walked up and down the office while the girl used the telephone. "No," she said when she had finished. Did you send her out in a taxi?" His grunt probably meant yes. "Are you sure somebody must have followed her?" Spade stopped pacing the floor. He put his hands on his hips and glared at the girl. He addressed her in a loud, savage voice. "Nobody followed her. Do you think I'm a goddamn schoolboy? I made sure of it before I put her in the cab. I rode a dozen blocks with her to be more sure, and I checked her another half-dozen blocks after I got out." "Well, but she didn't get there. You've told me that. I believe it. Do you think I think she got there? She did get there?" Effie Perrine sniffed. "You certainly act like a goddamn schoolboy," she said. Spade made a harsh noise in his throat and went to the corridor door. "I'm going out and find her if I have to dig up sewers," he said. "Stay here till I'm back or you hear from me. For Christ's sakes, let's do something right." He went out, walked half the distance to the elevators, retraced his steps. Effie Perrine was sitting at her desk when he opened the door. He said, "You ought to know better. Pay attention to me when I talk like that." "If you think I pay any attention to you, you're crazy," she replied. "Only..." She crossed her arms and felt her shoulders, and her mouth twitched uncertainly. "I won't be able to wear an evening gown for 2 weeks, you big brute." He grinned humbly. "I'm no damn good, darling." He made an exaggerated bow and went out again. "That is more than a little manipulative there, Sam. Come on, brother. You don't get to gaslight your secretary. That's not right. That's just not right." Two yellow taxicabs were at the corner stand to which Spade went. Their chauffeurs were standing together, talking. Spade asked, "Where's the red-faced blonde driver that was here at noon?" "Got a load," one of the chauffeurs said. "Will he be back here?" "I guess so." The other chauffeur ducked his head to the east. "Here it comes now." Spade walked down to the corner and stood by the curb until the red-faced blonde chauffeur had parked his cab and got out. Then Spade went up to him and said, "I got into your cab with a lady at noontime. We went out Stockton Street and up Sacramento to Jones, where I got out." "Sure," the red-faced man said. "I remember that." "I told you to take her to 9th Avenue, number." "You didn't take her there. Where did you take her?" The chauffeur rubbed his cheek with a grimy hand and looked doubtfully at Spade. "I don't know about this." "It's all right," Spade assured him, giving him one of his cards. "If you want to play safe, though, we can ride up to your office and get your superintendent's okay." I guess that's all right." I took her to the Ferry Building." "By herself?" "Yeah, sure." "Didn't take her anywhere else first?" "No. It was like this. After we dropped you, I went on out Sacramento. And when we got to Polk, she rapped on the glass and said she wanted to get a newspaper. So I stopped at the corner and whistled for a kid, and she got her paper." "Which paper?" "The Call." Then I went on out Sacramento some more, and just after we'd crossed Van Ness, she knocked on the glass again and said to take her to the Ferry Building." "Was she excited or something?" "Not so as I noticed." "And when you got to the Ferry Building?" "She paid me off, and that was all." "Anybody waiting for her there?" "I didn't see them if there was." "Which way did she go?" "At the ferry? I don't know. Maybe upstairs? Or toward the stairs?" "Take the newspaper with her?" "Yeah. She had it tucked under her arm when she paid me." "With the pink sheet outside?" or one of the white?
Hell, Cap, I don't remember that.
Spade thanked the chauffeur, said, "Get yourself a smoke," and gave him a silver dollar. Well, Miss O'Shaughnessy's up to something, certainly. Spade bought a copy of the Call and carried it into an office building vestibule to examine it out of the wind. His eyes ran swiftly over the front page headlines and over those on the second and third pages. They paused for a moment under "Suspect Arrested as Counterfeiter" on the fourth page, and again on page 5 under "Bay Youth Seeks Death with Bullet." Ooh. Pages 6 and 7 held to nothing to interest him. On 8, 3 boys arrested as San Francisco burglars after shooting, or SF, held his attention for a moment, and after that, nothing, until he reached the 35th page. Well, that's a solid newspaper, wow. Which held news of the weather, shipping, produce, finance, divorce, births, marriages, and deaths. He read the list of dead, passed over pages 36 and 37, financial news, found nothing to stop his eyes on the 38th and last page, sighed, folded the newspaper and put it in his coat pocket and rolled a cigarette. 38 pages. A Sunday edition isn't even close to that these days. Wow. For 5 minutes he stood there in the office building vestibule, smoking and staring sulkily at nothing. Then he walked up to Stockton Street, hailed a taxicab, and had himself driven to the Coronet. He let himself into the building, and into Bridget O'Shaughnessy's apartment with the key she had given him. The blue gown she had worn the previous night was hanging across the foot of her bed. Her blue stockings and slippers were on the bedroom floor. The polychrome box that had held jewelry in her dressing table drawer now stood empty on the dressing table top. Spade frowned at it, ran his tongue across his lips, strolled through the rooms, looking around but not touching anything, then left the Coronet and went downtown again. In the doorway of Spade's office building, he came face to face with the boy he had left at Gutman's. The boy put himself in Spade's path, blocking the entrance.
Come on, he wants to see you.
The boy's hands were in his overcoat pockets. His pockets bulged more than his hands need have made them bulge. Spade grinned and said mockingly, "I didn't expect you till 5:25. I hope I haven't kept you waiting." The boy raised his eyes to Spade's mouth and spoke in the strained voice of one in physical pain.
Keep on riding me, and you're going to be picking iron out of your navel.
Spade chucked. "The cheaper the crook, the gaudier the patter," he said cheerfully. "Well, let's go." They walked up Sutter Street side by side. The boy kept his hands in his overcoat pockets. They walked a little more than a block in silence. Then Spade asked pleasantly, How long have you been off the gooseberry lay, son?" The boy did not show that he had heard the question. "Did you ever—" Spade began and stopped. A soft light began to glow in his yellowish eyes. He did not address the boy again. They went into the Alexandria, rode up to the 12th floor, walked down the corridor towards Gutman's suite. Nobody else was in the corridor. Spade lagged a little, so that when they were within 15 feet of Gutman's door, he was perhaps a foot and a half behind the boy. He leaned sideways suddenly and grasped the boy from behind by both arms, just beneath the boy's elbows. He forced the boy's arms forward, so the boy's hands in his overcoat pockets lifted the overcoat up before him. The boy struggled and squirmed, but he was impotent in the big man's grip. The boy kicked back, but his feet went between Spade's spread legs. Spade lifted the boy straight up from the floor and brought him down hard on his feet again. The impact made little noise on the thick carpet. At the moment of impact, Spade's hands slid down and got a fresh grip on the boy's wrists. The boy, teeth set hard together, did not stop straining against the man's big hands, but he could not tear himself loose. Could not keep the man's hands from crawling down over his own hands. The boy's teeth ground together audibly, making a noise that mingled with the noise of Spade's breathing as Spade crushed the boy's hands. They were tense and motionless, for a long moment. Then the boy's arms became limp. Spade released the boy and stepped back. In each of Spade's hands, when they came out of the boy's overcoat pockets, there was a heavy, automatic pistol. The boy turned and faced Spade. The boy's face was a ghastly white blank. He kept his hands in his overcoat pockets. He looked at Spade's chest and did not say anything. Spade put the pistols in his own pockets and grinned derisively. "Come on," he said. "This will put you in solid with your boss." They went to Gutman's door and Spade knocked. All right, that brings us to the end of chapter 12. That was a solid chapter. That was just about, we got through, what, 2 chapters in the first hour or so? The next one is probably a little bit too long to go before our break, so we'll take a stop. But first, let's decompress a little bit. Sam has been going all around town. And Bridget did not go to the secretary's house. Did not go back home. Well, maybe we went home for a little while, but she's certainly missing. And we've met and maybe been subtly double-crossed by the G who was alluded to earlier, who is otherwise known as the Fat Man. But we'll find out pretty quickly if the boy, being very well armed, was part of Gutman's plan, or whether it was just him being a little uppity. He's sort of shown a penchant for being ambitious, impetuous, a little bit of both. I'm surprised we didn't get any more swearing out of him, or very inventive ways to avoid swearing. I have been very impressed with with the lengths the author is going to go without saying the F word in this. It's pretty impressive, honestly. And to be perfectly frank, I kind of like it that way. Like, I don't mind swearing, but the creativity shown to avoid it like that, to dance around it and give you the full knowledge of what was actually said without it being said, that's actually pretty talented. Gotta give it to him there. All right, let's go ahead and take a short break. We'll be back just as soon as I've made another drink, and we'll see what we have left to go tonight. We're just over the halfway mark, and things are certainly getting interesting. And it will only get better from here, I'm sure. So, be back in just a few minutes. Thanks, guys. Alright, we are back. Let me switch this, and I do need to make a slight adjustment, because as I was talking about my discovery of a fresh bottle as I was getting ready for tonight, I couldn't help myself. Well, it's kind of hard to see here. Let me scooch over. There we go. Yep, the black and white does not do any favors for reading text over my shoulder, but so be it. But we've opened up the bottle of Sazerac Rye, and wow, I have to say, I haven't had a rye in a while. It's good. Oh, this has got a great head on it. Oh, and it warms all the way down. And honestly, it was only $35 for a fifth. Very, very reasonable for a quality rye. I will happily add this to my short list of things to keep stocked, I think. Yeah, that's about what the 35 to 40 is about my target for a good fifth. I will go higher for a special occasion, and lower is like picking up Evan Williams for mixers. Like it's all about the occasion, and just cracking one open at the start of a 3-day weekend and having a nice sipper. That sounds like a good enough occasion for me. All right, so let's go ahead and jump back in where we left off. We have just barely crossed the halfway point in this book, so we've got a lot of development still to happen. And really, in the 2 chapters that we've got in tonight so far, a lot has happened already. There's been new characters brought to light, new, presumably, betrayals by characters that we do know, and the ladies in Sam's life getting into all sorts of trouble. Whether it be his partner's widow, whether it be his secretary. Well, really, she hasn't done anything wrong. It's just more that he did her wrong, and then she kind of fawned over him about it. That's another thing. That's a whole thing to unpack. So let's move on from that one. And then Bridget being Bridget. She's just always extra sus. It's kind of her whole spiel. We've seen the introduction of the lawyer, who is, as lawyerly as can be expected, and the fat man, Mr. Gutman, G, as was so ominously referred to, with just tracing it in the air earlier. So there's more than meets the eye to this fat man, if the others are too afraid to even mention him. So, let's see, with this reunion, how things will develop and play out. Chapter 13, The Emperor's Gift. Gutman opened the door. A glad smile lighted his fat face. He held out a hand and said, "Come in, sir. Thank you for coming. Come in." Spade shook the hand and entered. The boy went in behind him. The fat man shut the door. Spade took the boy's pistols from his pockets and held them out to Gutman. "Here, you shouldn't let him run around with these. He'll get himself hurt." The fat man laughed merrily and took the pistols. Well, he said, "What's this?" He looked from Spade to the boy. Spade said, "A crippled newsie took them away from him, but I made him give them back." The white-faced boy took the pistols out of Gutman's hands and pocketed them. The boy did not speak. Gutman laughed again. "My God, sir," he told Spade, "you're a chap worth knowing. An amazing character. Come in, sit down. Give me your hat." The boy left the room by the door to the right of the entrance. The fat man installed Spade in a green plush chair by the table, pressed a cigar upon him, held a light to it, mixed whiskey and carbonated water, put one glass in Spade's hand, and holding the other, sat down facing Spade. "Now, sir," he said, "I hope you'll let me apologize for—" "Never mind that," Spade said. Let's talk about the black bird. The fat man cocked his head to the left and regarded Spade with fond eyes. All right, sir, he agreed. Let's. He took a sip from the glass in his hand. This is going to be the most astounding thing you've ever heard of, sir. And I say that knowing that a man of your caliber in your profession must have known some astounding things in his time. Spade nodded politely. The fat man screwed up his eyes and asked, What do you know, sir, about the Order of the Hospital of St. John of Jerusalem, later called the Knights of Rhodes, and other things? Okay, are we dealing with Templar in our detective story? Excuse me? Spade waved his cigar. Not much. Only what I remember from history in school. Crusaders or something. Very good. Now, you don't remember that Suleiman the Magnificent chased them out of Rhodes? I always... It's always hard to determine which pronunciation of Suleiman or Suleiman or whichever is appropriate in any given speech. Because it kind of depends on who's saying. But, Suleiman is better. Now, you don't remember that Suleiman the Magnificent chased them out of Rhodes in 1523? No. Well, sir, he did, and they settled in Crete. And they stayed there for 7 years, until 1530, when they persuaded the Emperor Charles V to give them, Goodman held up 3 puffy fingers and counted them, Malta, Gozo, and Tripoli. Yes? Yes, sir. But with these conditions, they were to pay the Emperor each year the tribute of 1, he held up a finger, falcon, in acknowledgement that Malta was still under Spain, and if they ever left the island, it was to revert to Spain. Understood? He was giving it to them, but not unless they used it, and they couldn't give or sell it to anybody else. Yes? The fat man looked over his shoulders at the 3 closed doors, hunched his chair a few inches nearer Spade's, and reduced his voice to a husky whisper. Have you any conception of the extreme, the immeasurable wealth of the Order at that time? If I remember, Spade said, they were pretty well fixed. Yeah, it is interesting that the Crusades keep coming up, and it's not just a modern thing that it keeps coming up as well. Like, we've seen, this was in 1930, mind you. So, but we see even now with things like the Da Vinci Code and things like that, where the Crusades are constantly coming up, whether it be like the evolution of the Crusaders into the Masons or anything, like all these modern stories of adding mystery to just any story by saying Crusades. And this isn't just something that's happened in the last 50 years. No. This is at least 100-year-old obsession. So be it. Gutman smiled indulgently. Pretty well, sir, is putting it mildly. His whisper became lower and more purring. They were rolling in wealth, sir. You've no idea. None of us has any idea. For years they had preyed on the Saracens, had taken nobody knows what spoils, gems, precious metals, silks, ivories, the cream of the East. That is history, sir. We all know that the holy wars to them, as to the Templars, were largely a matter of loot. You know what? Yeah, I'd forgotten that Lamort Arthur had the Crusade arc, where that was completely irrelevant. But you know what? There it was. Fair enough. Good reminder. Good memory there. Well, now, the Emperor Charles had given them Malta, and all the rent he asks is one insignificant bird per annum, just as a matter of form. What could be more natural than for these immeasurably wealthy knights to look around for some way of expressing their gratitude? Well, sir, that's exactly what they did, and they hit on the happy thought of sending Charles for the first year's tribute, not an insignificant live bird, but a glorious golden falcon encrusted from head to foot with the finest jewels in their coffers. And, remember, sir, they had fine ones, the finest out of Asia. Gutman stopped whispering. His sleek, dark eyes examined Spade's face, which was placid. The fat man asked, "Well, sir, what do you think of that?" "I don't know." The fat man smiled complacently. "These are facts. Historical facts. Not schoolbook history, not Mr. Wells's history, but history nonetheless." He leaned forward. "The archives of the order from the 12th century are still at Malta. They are not intact, but what is there holds no less than 3. He held up 3 fingers, references that can't be to anything else but this jeweled falcon. In J. de la Ville, les rules, les archives de l'ordre de Saint-Jean, there is a reference to it. Oblique, to be sure, but a reference still. And the unpublished, because unfinished at the time of his death, supplement to Paoli's Del Origine ed Institutio del Sacro Militar Ordine has a clear and unmistakable statement of the facts I am telling you." Okay, hold up. Was it strictly necessary, absolutely necessary, to name drop both French and Latin in the same paragraph, the same sentence, as we're talking about the Templars that, mind you, are in Spanish islands? Is that strictly necessary, Mr. G? Just keeping me on my toes, I suppose. It's been too long since we had to deal with any sort of other language pronunciations. Can't catch me lacking. That's all it was. "All right," Spade said. "All right, sir. Grand Master Villiers de Ile d'Adam had this foot-high jeweled bird made by Turkish slaves in the castle of St. Angelo and sent it to Charles, who was in Spain. He sent it in a galley commanded by a French knight named Cormier or Corvair, a member of the order." His voice dropped to a whisper again. "It never reached Spain." He smiled with compressed lips and asked, "You know of Barbarossa, Redbeard, Kheireddin? No? A famous admiral of buccaneers sailing out of Algiers then? Well, sir, he took the knight's galley, and he took the bird. The bird went to Algiers. That's a fact. That's a fact that the French historian Pierre Dan put in one of his letters from Algiers. He wrote that the bird had been there for more than 100 years, until it was carried away by Sir Francis Verney, the English adventurer, who was with the Algerian buccaneers for a while. Maybe it wasn't, but Pierre Dan believed it was, and that's good enough for me." Oh yes. Pirates. Famous pirates. Barbarossa of all things. crusaders, pirates. There'll be ninjas yet. I don't know how. There'll be ninjas. I swear it. There's nothing said about the bird in Lady Frances Burney's Memoirs of the Burney Family during the 17th century. To be sure. I looked, and it's pretty certain that Sir Francis didn't have the bird when he died in a Messina hospital in 1615. He was stony broke. But, sir, there's no denying that the bird did go to Sicily. It was there, and it came into the possession there of Victor Amadeus II, some time after he became king in 1713. And it was one of his gifts to his wife when he married in Chambéry after abdicating. That is a fact, sir. Caruti, the author of Storia del Regno di Vittorio Amadeo II, himself vouched for it. Maybe they, Amadeo and his wife, took it along with them to Turin when he tried to revoke his abdication. Be that as it may, it turned up next in the possession of a Spaniard who had been with the army that took Naples in 1734, the father of Don José Moreno y Rodondo, Count of Floridablanca, who was Charles III's chief minister. There's nothing to show that it didn't stay in that family until at least the end of the Carlist War in 40. Then it appeared in Paris, at just about the time that Paris was full of Carlists who had had to get out of Spain. One of them must have brought it with him. But whoever it was, it's likely he knew nothing about its real value. It had been, no doubt, as a precaution during the Carlist trouble in Spain, painted or enameled over to look like nothing more than a fairly interesting black statuette. In that disguise, sir, it was, you might say, kicked around Paris for 70 years by private owners and dealers too stupid to see what it was under the skin. The fat man paused to smile and shake his head regretfully. Then he went on, "For 70 years, sir, this marvelous gem was, as you might say, a football in the gutters of Paris, until 1911, when a Greek dealer named Charles Constantinides found it in an obscure shop. It didn't take Charles long to learn what it was and to acquire it. No thickness of enamel could conceal value from his eyes and nose. Well, sir, Charles was the man who traced most of its history and who identified it as what it actually was. I got wind of it, and finally forced most of the history out of him, though I've been able to add a few details since. Charles was in no hurry to convert his find into money at once. He knew that, enormous as its intrinsic value was, a far higher, a terrific price could be obtained for it once its authenticity was established beyond doubt. Possibly, he planned to do business with one of the modern descendants of the old order, the English order of St. John of Jerusalem, the Prussian Johanniterden, or the Italian or German Langes of the Sovereign Order of Malta, all wealthy orders. The fat man raised his glass, smiled at its emptiness, and rose to fill it and Spade's. You begin to believe me a little? He asked as he worked the siphon. I haven't said I didn't. No, Gutman chuckled. But how you looked. He sat down, drank generously, and patted his mouth with a white handkerchief. "Well, sir, to hold it safe while pursuing his researches into its history, Charles had re-enameled the bird. Apparently, just as it is now. 1 year to the very day after he had acquired it. That was possibly 3 months after I'd made him confess to me. I picked up the Times in London and read that his establishment had been burglarized and him murdered. I was in Paris the next day." He shook his head sadly. "The bird was gone. By Gad, sir, I was wild. I didn't believe anybody else knew what it was. I didn't believe he had told anybody but me. A great quantity of stuff had been stolen. That made me think that the thief had simply taken the bird along with the rest of his plunder, not knowing what it was. Because I assure you that a thief who knew its value would not burden himself with anything else. No, sir. At least, not anything less than crown jewels." He shut his eyes and smiled complacently at an inner thought. He opened his eyes and said, "That was 17 years ago. Well, sir, it took me 17 years to locate that bird, but I did it. I wanted it, and I'm not a man that's easily discouraged when he wants something." His smile grew broad. "I wanted it, and I found it. I want it, and I'm going to have it." He drained his glass, dried his lips again, and returned his handkerchief to his pocket. "I traced it to the home of a Russian general, one Khemidov, in a Constantinople suburb. He didn't know a thing about it. It was nothing but a black enameled figure to him. But his natural contrariness, the natural contrariness of a Russian general, kept him from selling it to me when I made him an offer. Perhaps, in my eagerness, I was a little unskillful, though not very. I don't know about that, but I did know. I wanted it, and I was afraid this stupid soldier might begin to investigate his property, might chip off some of the enamel. So I sent some, agents to get it. Well, sir, they got it, and I haven't got it." He stood up and carried his empty glass to the table. "But I'm going to get it. Your glass, sir." "Then the bird doesn't belong to any of you," Spade asked, "but to a General Khemidov?" "Belong?" the fat man said jovially. "Well, sir, you might say it belonged to the King of Spain. But I don't see how you can honestly grant anybody else clear title to it, except by right of possession," he clucked. "An article of that value that is passed from hand to hand by such means is clearly the property of whoever can get hold of it." "Then it's Miss O'Shaughnessy's now." "No, sir, except as my agent." Spade said, "Oh," ironically. Gutman, looking thoughtfully at the stopper of the whiskey bottle in his hand, asked, "There's no doubt that she's got it now." "Not much. Where?" "I don't know exactly." The fat man set the bottle on the table with a bang. "But you said you did," he protested. Spade made a careless gesture with one hand. "I meant to say I know where to get it when the time comes." The pink bulbs of Gutman's face arranged themselves more happily. "And you do?" he asked. "Yes. Where?" Spade grinned and said, "Leave that to me. That's my end. When I'm ready." The fat man pursed his lips and, smiling, with only slight uneasiness, asked, "Mr. Spade, where is Miss O'Shaughnessy now?" "In my hands, safely tucked away." Gutman smiled with approval. "Trust you for that, sir," he said. "Well now, sir, before we sit down to talk prices, answer me this. How soon can you, or how soon are you willing to, produce the Falcon?" "A couple of days." The fat man nodded. "That is satisfactory. I forgot our nourishment." He turned to the table, poured whiskey, squirted charged water into it, set a glass at Spade's elbow, and held his own aloft. "Well, sir, here's to a fair bargain, and profits large enough for both of us." They drank. The fat man sat down. Spade asked, "What's your idea of a fair bargain?" Gutman held his glass up to the light, looked affectionately at it, took another long drink, and said, "I have two proposals to make, sir, and either is fair. Take your choice. I will give you $25,000 when you deliver the Falcon to me, and another $25,000 as soon as I get to New York. Or I will give you 1/4, 25% of what I realize on the Falcon. There you are, sir. An almost immediate $50,000, or a vastly greater sum within, say, a couple of months." Spade drank and asked, "How much greater?" "Vastly," the fat man repeated. "Who knows how much greater? Shall I say 100,000? Or 250,000? Will you believe me if I name the sum that seems the probable minimum?" "Why not?" The fat man smacked his lips and lowered his voice to a purring murmur. "What would you say, sir, to 500,000? Spade narrowed his eyes. "Then you think the dingus is worth 2 million? Gutman smiled serenely. "In your own words, why not?" he asked. Spade emptied his glass and set it on the table. He put his cigar in his mouth, took it out, looked at it, and put it back in. His yellow-gray eyes were faintly muddy. He said, "That's a hell of a lot of dough." The fat man agreed. "That's a hell of a lot of dough." He leaned forward and patted Spade's knee. "That is the absolute rock-bottom minimum, or Charilaus Constantinides was a blithering idiot. And he wasn't." Spade removed the cigar from his mouth again, frowned at it with distaste, and put it on the smoking stand. He shut his eyes hard, opened them again. Their muddiness had thickened. He said, The minimum, huh? And the maximum?" An unmistakable sh followed the X in maximum as he said it. The maximum. Sam is slurring a little bit as he's getting a little starry-eyed at all these, it seems. "The maximum." Gutman held his empty hand out, palm up. "I refuse to guess. You think me crazy, I don't know. There's no telling how high it could go, sir. and that's the one and only truth about it. Spade pulled his sagging lower lip tight against the upper. He shook his head impatiently. A sharp, frightened gleam awoke in his eyes and was smothered by the deepening muddiness. He stood up, helping himself up with his hands on the arms of his chair. He shook his head again and took an uncertain step forward. He laughed thickly and muttered, "God damn you!" Gutman jumped up and pushed his chair back. His fat globes jiggled. His eyes were dark holes in an oily pink face. Spade swung his head from side to side until his dull eyes were pointed at, if not focused on, the door. He took another uncertain step. The fat man called sharply, "Wilmer!" A door opened and the boy came in. Oh, now we know the boy's name. Spade took a third step. His face was gray now, with jaw muscles standing out like tumors under his ears. His legs did not straighten up again after his fourth step, and his muddy eyes were almost covered by their lids. He took his fifth step. The boy walked over and stood close to Spade, a little in front of him, but not directly between Spade and the door. The boy's right hand was inside his coat, over his heart. The corner of his mouth twitched. Spade essayed his sixth step. The boy's leg darted out across Spade's leg in front. Spade tripped over the interfering leg and crashed face down on the floor. The boy, keeping his right hand under his coat, looked down at Spade. Spade tried to get up. The boy drew his right foot far back and kicked Spade's temple. The kick rolled Spade over on his side. Once more he tried to get up, could not, and went to sleep. Well, I don't think anyone can say they didn't expect some sort of betrayal like that. That was a lot of history on the bird in that one, and it seemed like Gutman was going to be an even partner in all this. It certainly seemed that way, being very forthright with information. But as with anything, if it sounds too good to be true, chances are it is. So, now, our hero is a bit of an ambitious turn of phrase at this point. Sam is not exactly the heroic sort, but he's the protagonist anyway. But he's now in the hands of the Fat Man, and we'll see what sort of nefarious means things are about to come about on. This is very much a James Bond style moment, in the hands of the villain with the laser inching up. It's like, what do you want out of me? I want you to die, Mr. Bond, sort of situation. And I'm here for it. I love this. This is every bit the detective drama that we were expecting when we started this. All right, we've got about half an hour left, and I want to get about 5% further through this book. I have a feeling this next chapter might do us that benchmark. So, let's go ahead and dive back in to where we left off. Well, not really where we left off. We'll just continue our reading with Chapter 14, La Paloma. Spade, coming around the corner from the elevator at a few minutes past 6 in the morning, saw yellow light glowing through the frosted glass of his office door. He halted abruptly, set his lips together, looked up and down the corridor, and advanced to the door with swift, quiet strides. He put his hand on the knob and turned it with care that permitted neither rattle nor click. He turned the knob until it would turn no further. The door was locked. Holding the knob still, he changed hands, taking it now in his left hand. With his right hand, he brought his keys out of his pocket, carefully, so they could not jingle against one another. He separated the office key from the others, and, smothering the others together in his palm, inserted the office key in the lock. The insertion was soundless. He balanced himself on the balls of his feet, filled his lungs, clicked the door open, and went in. Effie Perrine sat sleeping, with her head on her forearms on her desk. She wore her coat and had one of Spade's overcoats wrapped cape fashion around her. Spade blew his breath out in a muffled laugh, shut the door behind him, and crossed to the inner door. The inner office was empty. He went over to the girl and put a hand on her shoulder. She stirred, raised her head drowsily, and her eyelids fluttered. Suddenly, she sat up straight, opening her eyes wide. She saw Spade, smiled, leaned back in her chair, and rubbed her eyes with her fingers. "So, you finally got back," she said. "What time is it?" 6 o'clock. "What are you doing here?" She shivered, drew Spade's overcoat closer around her, and yawned. You told me to stay till you got back or phoned." "Oh, you're the sister of the boy who stood on the burning deck." I wasn't going to." She broke off and stood up, letting his coat slide down on the chair behind her. She looked with dark, excited eyes at his temple under the brim of his hat and exclaimed, "Oh, your head! What happened?" His right temple was dark and swollen. "I don't know either. I fell or I was slugged. I don't think it amounts to much, but it hurts like hell." He barely touched it with his fingers, flinched, turned his grimace into a grim smile, and explained, "I went visiting. I was fed knockout drops and came to 12 hours later, all spread out on a man's floor." She reached up and removed his hat from his head. "It's terrible," she said. "You'll have to get a doctor. You can't walk around with a head like that." "It's not as bad as it looks, except for the headache. And that might be mostly from the drops." He went to the cabinet in the corner of the office and ran cold water in a handkerchief. "Anything turn up after I left?" "Did you find Miss O'Shaughnessy, Sam?" "Not yet. Anything turn up after I left?" "The district attorney's office phoned. He wants to see you." "Himself?" "Yes, that's the way I understood it. And a boy came in with a message that Mr. Gutman would be delighted to talk to you before 5:30. Spade turned off the water, squeezed the handkerchief, and came away from the cabinet, holding the handkerchief to his temple. "I got that," he said. "I met the boy downstairs, and talking to Mr. Gutman got me this." "Is that the G who phoned, Sam?" "Yes." "And what?" Spade stared through the girl and spoke as if using speech to arrange his thoughts. "He wants something he thinks I can get. I persuaded him I could keep him from getting it if I didn't make the deal with me. If he didn't make the deal with me before 5:30. Then, sure. It was after I told him he'd have to wait a couple days that he fed me the junk. It's not likely he thought I'd die. He'd know I'd be up and around in 10 or 12 hours. So maybe the answer's that he figured he could get it without my help in that time if I was fixed, so I couldn't butt in." He scowled. I hope to Christ he was wrong. His stare became less distant. "You didn't get any word from the O'Shaughnessy?" The girl shook her head no and asked, "Has this got anything to do with her?" "Something." "The thing he wants belongs to her?" "Or to the King of Spain. Sweetheart, you've got an uncle who teaches history or something over at the university." "A cousin? Why?" "If we brightened his life with an alleged historical secret 4 centuries old, could we trust him to keep it dark a while?" "Oh, yes, he's good people." "Fine. Get your pencil and book." She got them and sat in her chair. Spade ran more cold water on his handkerchief. And, holding it to his temple, stood in front of her and dictated the story of the Falcon as he had heard it from Gutman. From Charles V's grant to the Hospitaliers, up to, but no further than, the enameled bird's arrival in Paris at the time of the Carlist influx. He stumbled over the names of authors and their works that Gutman had mentioned, but managed to achieve some sort of phonetic likeness. The rest of the history he repeated with the accuracy of a trained interviewer. When he had finished, the girl shut her notebook and raised a flushed, smiling face to him. "Oh, isn't this thrilling?" she said. "It's—" "Yes, or ridiculous. Now, will you take it over and read it to your cousin and ask him what he thinks of it? Has he ever run across anything that might have some connection with it? Is it probable? Is it possible? Even barely possible? Or is it the bunk? If he wants more time to look it up, okay, but get some sort of opinion out of him now. And for God's sake, make him keep it under his hat." "I'll go right now," she said, "and you go see a doctor about that head." "We'll have breakfast first." "No, I'll eat over in Berkeley." "I can't wait to hear what Ted thinks of this." "Well," Spade said, "don't start boo-hooing if he laughs at you." Well, I didn't expect Spade to just be let go after all that. So, I guess the getting him roofied was just a matter of buying some time. I guess. We'll see how that shapes out. How it works out for all the involved parties. After a leisurely breakfast at the palace, during which he read both morning papers, Spade went home, shaved, bathed, rubbed ice on his bruised temple, and put on fresh clothes. He went to Bridget O'Shaughnessy's apartment at the Coronet. Nobody was in the apartment. Nothing had been changed in it since his last visit. He went to the Alexandria Hotel. Gutman was not in. None of the other occupants of Gutman's suite was in. Spade learned that these other occupants were the fat man's secretary, Wilmer Cook, and his daughter, Rhea, a brown-eyed, fair-haired, smallish girl of 17, whom the hotel staff said was beautiful. That's foreshadowing if I ever heard it. Spade was told that the Gutman party had arrived at the hotel from New York 10 days before and had not checked out. Spade went to the Belvedere and found the hotel detective eating in the hotel cafe.
"Morning, Sam. Sit down and bite an egg."
The hotel detective stared at Spade's temple.
"By God, somebody's maced you plenty."
"Thanks, I've had mine," Spade said as he sat down, and then, referring to his temple, "It looks worse than it is. How's my Cairo's conduct?"
"He went out not more than half an hour before you yesterday. I ain't seen him since. He didn't sleep here again last night."
"He's getting bad habits."
"Well, I felt like that alone in a big city. Who put the slug to you, Sam?"
"It wasn't Cairo." Spade looked attentively at the small silver dome covering Luke's toast. "How's the chances of giving his room a casing while he's out?"
"Can do. You know, I'm willing to go all the way with you all the time."
Luke pushed his coffee back, put his elbows on the table, and screwed up his eyes at Spade.
"Well, I got a hunch you ain't going all the way with me. What's the honest to God on this guy, Sam? You don't have to kick back on me. You know I'm regular."
Spade lifted his eyes from the silver dome. They were clear and candid. "Sure you are," he said. "I'm not holding out. I gave it you straight. I'm doing a job for him, but he's got some friends that look wrong to me, and I'm a little leery of him."
"The kid we chased out yesterday was one of his friends?"
"Yes, Luke, he was."
"It was one of them that shoved Miles across?"
Spade shook his head. "Thursby killed Miles."
"And who killed him?"
Spade smiled. "That's supposed to be a secret, but confidentially, I did," he said, "according to the police." Luke grunted and stood up, saying,
"You're a tough one to figure out, Sam. Come on, we'll let that look see."
They stopped at the desk long enough for Luke to fix it so we'll get a ring if he comes in, and went up to Cairo's room. Cairo's bed was smooth and trim, but paper in the wastebasket in the wastebasket. Unevenly drawn blinds and a couple of rumpled towels in the bathroom showed that the chambermaid had not yet been in that morning. Cairo's luggage consisted of a square trunk, a valise, and a Gladstone bag. His bathroom cabinet was stocked with cosmetics, boxes, cans, jars, and bottles of powders, creams, unguents, perfumes, lotions, and tonics. 2 suits and an overcoat hung in the closet, over 3 pairs of carefully treed shoes. The valise and smaller bag were unlocked. Luke had the trunk unlocked by the time Spade had finished searching elsewhere. "Blank so far," Spade said as they dug into the trunk. They found nothing there to interest them. "Any particular thing we're supposed to be looking for?" Luke asked as he locked the trunk again. "No. He's supposed to have come here from Constantinople. I'd like to know if he did. I haven't seen anything that says he didn't." "What's his record?" Spade shook his head. "That's something else I'd like to know." He crossed the room and bent down over the wastebasket. "Well, this is our last shot." He took a newspaper from the basket. His eyes brightened when he saw it was the previous day's Call. It was folded with the classified advertising page outside. He opened it, examined that page, and nothing there stopped his eyes. He turned the paper over and looked at the page that had been folded inside. The page that held financial and shipping news. The weather, births, marriages, divorces, and deaths. From the lower left-hand corner, a little more than 2 inches of the bottom of the second column had been torn out. Immediately above the tear was a small caption, "Arrived today," followed by 12:20 a.m., Kapak from Astoria. 5:05 a.m., Helen P. Drew from Greenwood. 5:06 a.m., Alvarado from Bandon. The tear passed through the next line, leaving only enough of its letters to make "From Sydney" inefferable. Spade put the Call down on the desk and looked into the wastebasket again. He found a small piece of wrapping paper, a piece of string, 2 hosiery tags, a haberdasher's sale ticket for a half-dozen pairs of socks, and, in the bottom of the basket, a piece of newspaper rolled into a tiny ball. I wouldn't have expected a haberdasher to sell socks. I thought they were mostly hats, but okay. He opened the ball carefully, smoothed it out on the desk, and fitted it into the torn part of the Call. The fit at the sides was exact, but between the top of the crumpled fragment and the inefferable "From Sydney," half an inch was missing. Sufficient space to have held an announcement of 6 or 7 boats' arrival. He turned the sheet over and saw that the other side of the missing portion could have held only a meaningless corner of a stockbroker's advertisement. Luke, leaning over his shoulder, asked, "What's all this about?" "Looks like the gent's interested in a boat." "Oh, millionaire is the... Okay, got it." Guess haberdasher's more of a generalist. "Well, there's no long outs there, or is there?" Luke said while Spade was folding the torn page and the crumpled fragment together and putting them in his coat pocket. "You all through here now?" "Yes. Thanks a lot, Luke. Will you give me a ring as soon as he comes?" "Sure." So, I wonder if Sam's still got the old paper, or if he's just gonna head down to the port and see what sort of boats are coming in after 5:06. Probably not the one from Sydney, so... Spade went to the business office of the Call, bought a copy of the previous day's issue. Okay, well that sorts that out. Opened it to the shipping news page and compared it with the page taken from Cairo's wastebasket. The missing portion had read 5:17 a.m. Tahiti from Sydney and Papit. 6:05 a.m. Admiral Peoples from Astoria. Okay, why? YouTube, Why? Why would you censor that? Why would you block a haberdasher is men's accessories? That is the most innocuous thing I could possibly think of. Huh? Why? YouTube, do we have to have a talk? Is it just Akimos? Is that it? Yeah, for real. No, haberdasher comes through. It's just men's without... We have to know. We have to see. Okay, so it's... I have no idea. Is it just men's without anything? No, that came through fine. Well, Akimos, I think you might just be cursed. We've seen this before. Is, yes, indeed, is. You know what? I'm gonna do this. We're gonna do. See, you would capitalize haberdasher. Okay, so altogether, it does censor it from either of us. So, there is something about this specific bundling of words. You know what? I'm just gonna have to accept that I'll never understand Google. That's just what it's gonna have to be. All right, we hadn't quite finished through the schedule here, so we'll take that from. All right, 6:05 a.m. Admiral Peoples from Astoria. 8:07 a.m. Nice gap there. Catapeak from San Pedro. 8:17 a.m. Silverado from San Pedro. A couple things coming from San Pedro. 8:05 a.m. La Paloma from Hong Kong. Oh, that was the title, the chapter title drop. Oh. 9:03 a.m. Daisy Gray from Seattle. He read the list slowly, and when he had finished, he underscored Hong Kong with a fingernail, cut the list of arrivals from the newspaper with his pocket knife, and put the rest of the paper and Cairo's sheet into the wastebasket, and returned to his office. He sat down at his desk, looked up a number in the telephone book, and used the telephone. Kearney 1401, please. Where is the Paloma? In from Hong Kong yesterday morning, docked? He repeated the question. Thanks. He held the receiver hooked down with his thumb for a moment, released it, and said, Davenport 2020, please. Detective Bureau, please. Is Sergeant Polehouse there? Thanks. Hello, Tom. This is Sam Spade. Yes, I tried to get to you yesterday afternoon. Sure. Suppose you go to lunch with me? Right. He kept the receiver to his ear while his thumb worked the hook again. Davenport 1070, please. Reminder, this is all old-timey phones. You pick up the phone after you've done it, and you get the operator, and they connect you right there. So that's classy phone work operation there. Davenport 1070, please. Hello, this is Samuel Spade. My secretary got a phone message yesterday that Mr. Bryan wanted to see me. Will you ask him what time is the most convenient for him? Yes, Spade. S-P-A-D-E. A long pause. Yes. 2:30? All right, thanks. He called a fifth number and said, Hello, darling. Let me talk to Sid. Hello, Sid. Sam. I've got a date with the district attorney at 2:30 this afternoon. Will you give me a ring, here or there, around 4, just to see I'm not in trouble? Hell with your Saturday afternoon golf. Your job's to keep me out of jail. Right. Right, Sid. Bye. He pushed the telephone away, yawned, stretched, felt his bruised temple, looked at his watch, and rolled and lighted a cigarette. He smoked sleepily until Effie Perrine came in. Effie Perrine came in smiling, bright-eyed and rosy-faced. "Ted says it could be," she reported, "and he hopes it is. He says he's not a specialist in that field, but the names and dates are all right. And at least none of your authorities or their works are out-and-out fakes. He's all excited over it." "That's swell. As long as he doesn't get too enthusiastic to see through it if it's phony." "Oh, he wouldn't. Not Ted. He's too good at his stuff for that." "Uh-huh. The whole damn Perrine family's wonderful," Spade said, "including you and the smudge of soot on your nose." "Oh, he's not a Perrine. He's a Christie." She bent her head to look at her nose in her vanity case mirror. "I must have got that from the fire." She scrubbed the smudge with the corner of a handkerchief. "The Perrine Christie enthusiasm ignite Berkeley?" he asked. She made a face at him while patting her nose with a powdered pink disc. "There was a boat on fire when I came back. They were towing it out from the pier and the smoke blew all over our ferry boat." Spade blew his hands on the arms of his chair, or put his hands on the arms of his chair. "Were you near enough to see the name of the boat?" he asked. "Yes, La Paloma. Why?" Spade smiled ruefully. "I'm damned if I know why, sister," he said. All right. Well then, that brings us to the end of chapter 14. And La Paloma was mentioned, and someone put it to the torch. That's more than a little ominous. But now, Sam's afternoon is booked. He's got meetings and check-ins all over the place. Lunch with the policeman, not the lieutenant, the sergeant that doesn't hate him. He's got an afternoon meeting with the district attorney. Whether or not we'll see if he's going to be arrested or not is entirely up to the story. And then a follow-up with his lawyer, because that's what you do after meeting with a district attorney. Seems sensible to me. But we'll have to see what other things will come about in this. But, unfortunately, I do not have the liberty to go over tonight. I've got a rather firm 10 o'clock. So, let's stop just a little bit early tonight. I'll set up bookmark here. Oop, not there. I'm rather liking the new reader. It fits very well. But yeah, so we've got a lot of things happening tonight. There's been introduction of new characters who are vastly entwined with things that are going on tonight. The aptly named Mr. Gutman, the Fat Man. Yeah, I see what you did there, author. The Fat Man, Mr. Gutman. But he's an interesting character. He's very well connected. He knows the story, and he may be the source of what's going on. And is just a little bit ominous, but also seems to be a rather relatable character. He's gone on a treasure hunt, and he wants his treasure. So, if he ends up being the villain, I'll not be too upset, but also, he'll be a relatable sort. Which is weird, because usually when you're introduced to the very fat character, you're just like, that's the bad guy. I'm not gonna like this one. That's the bad guy. But no, I actually kind of like Gutman. In a very, devious sort of way. Now his hired help, not quite so friendly. Not a fan of Wilhelm. But as we're going through, we're seeing a little bit more development going on. Other things going around. Cairo is up to something. Cairo knew the boat was coming in from Hong Kong. And Cairo may have been the one to set it to the torch. And Bridget, Miss O'Shaughnessy, has vanished. As she was supposed to be on the way to the secretary's mother's house to stay for a little while. So there is a lot of things going on, and no one is above suspicion. No one is above board. Everyone's holding something back for their own self-interest, including Sam. And I wouldn't have it any other way. This is a fantastic detective story so far. And really, from the clues we've been given, I don't really have any leads at all. Anyone could be the problem. Anyone, all of them could be the problem. I love it. I love it. So, we'll be back tomorrow for our continued reading of The Maltese Falcon. Should be getting, hopefully, to around the 80%-ish mark. And at this pace, we should be finishing up on Sunday. So we'll have a nice full weekend of detective stories. So, until we come back tomorrow, thank you very much for joining us. If you haven't yet, I encourage you to drop a like and a subscription to the channel. Let the algorithm know that we're doing some fun things around here. Until then, until tomorrow, have a wonderful night. Bye now.